Are we live, Sonia? Good evening, members. Welcome to the review committee meeting of Rochford District Council, and welcome to everyone who may be watching online. My name is Councillor Dave Sperring. I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. Working down the agenda item 1 is apologies for absence. I know we have apologies from our committee chairman, Councillor Jamie Burton, who is unwell. Do we have anybody else, Sonia?
No, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item number 2, substitute members. Are there any members substituting this evening? Don't believe so.
No, Chairman.
No, fine. Moving on to agenda item number 3, non-members attending.
We have Councillors Smith, Williams and FD attending, Chairman.
Thank you, Sonia. Moving on to agenda item number 4, the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of October 2020. Can I take those as accepted, members, or are there any other issues that you wish to raise? I can't see any indications of not accepting them, so I will take those as accepted, Sonia.
Thank you, Chairman.
Agenda item number 5, to receive declarations of interest, including any whipping interest. Are there any declarations of interest, please, members? I can't see any. Okay, that brings us on to the main body of the agenda. The first item is the 2021 mid-year Treasury Management Review. This will be presented by our AD and 151 officer, Ms. Naomi Lucas, ably supported, I'm sure, by a portfolio holder, Councillor Simon Smith. Okay, Naomi, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report presented tonight is to provide an update on the Council's Treasury management activity for the period 1st of April 2020 to the 30th of September 2020, in accordance with the Council's Treasury management policy and good practice. The mid-year report has been prepared in compliance with SIPFA's Code of Practice on Treasury Management and covers a number of different areas that are set out within the report. I'll just give you a very brief overview of each section. Firstly, there is an economic update which has been provided in conjunction with our Treasury Management advisors link. Members can read the body of the report, but in summary, it's not expected that the Bank of England's base rate will change from 0.1% for the foreseeable future. And as a consequence, investment rates are expected to remain close to zero. This does mean that borrowing interest rates will also remain historically cheap, but as members will be aware, the Council does not have any borrowing currently, so it won't take advantage of those rates. The latest forecasts for the base rate and the PWLB rates are shown in the tables at paragraph 3.5 of the report. The next section summarises any key movements or changes to the Council's capital and Treasury strategies. In summary, there is no changes to the strategy that was approved by Council on the 11th of February this year. So there's nothing really to report in regard to that. Section 5 of the report shows the potential indicators for capital investment and shows a summary at table 5.1 of the report, which shows the forecasted outturn for the council's capital expenditure as at 30th of September 2020. There were some changes agreed to the capital programme, which were agreed by full council on the 20th of October 2020, and they are reflected in the revised figures shown within that table. As I mentioned earlier, the council doesn't have any borrowing, so there's nothing to report in regard to that. Finally, the report shows a summary of the council's investment portfolio for the first half of this year. And the graph at paragraph 6.3 shows the average investments held by the authority over the first 6 months of the year. Members will see that balances were unusually high at the beginning of the year, and that is because at the start of the year, the government transferred around £18 million to the council to distribute in the form of small business grants, and they were paid out in the first couple of months of the year, which then brought the average investment rates back down in line with our normal expectations. I think that's all I was going to say at this point, but if members have any questions, I'm happy to try and answer them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Naomi. Okay, members, you've heard Naomi's brief presentation. You've all had the paperwork presented to you some days ago. Are there any questions? Councillor Mrs Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not a question as such, but I am pleased to see that the strategy has remained unchanged. Thank you.
Okay, members, is there anybody else wishes to raise anything? I can't see anybody. Sonia, can you see anybody? Okay, members, well, if there's nothing else.
Chairman,
Yep.
Councillor Smith is indicating.
All I was going to say, Chairman, just for a matter of record, that as usual, our Treasury management has been very well managed by our officers, particularly bearing in mind the circumstances in which we find ourselves. And just a brief mention that Naomi got through in a few seconds of saying we managed to allocate £18 million worth of grant that government gave us in under 2 months with a rigorous system, I think is absolutely to be commended. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, members. At the bottom of page 6.7, there is a recommendation. It is proposed that the review committee recommends the contents of this Treasury Management mid-year report to Council. If there are any members who wish to have a recorded vote, please indicate, otherwise the vote will be done electronically. Would you please indicate now if you wish to have a recorded vote? Nobody, Sonia? Okay,
No,
members,
no.
if you are in agreement that we push this recommendation forward to full council, would you please indicate by raising your blue hand now? Okay. Is there anybody against this recommendation? Please indicate now.
Chairman, if people could lower their hands first, please.
Would you lower your blue hands, please, members? Anybody not supporting this recommendation, please indicate now by raising your blue hand. No. Anybody abstaining, please raise your blue hand now.
Thank you, Chairman. That's agreed.
Thank you, members. Thank you, Naomi and Councillor Smith.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 7. Unfortunately, our AD, Councillor Marcus Houghton, is unwell and will not be able to be here this evening, but has sent along his able substitute, Ms. Leslie Athy, who will be making the presentation, supported by Councillor Williams, and reading out to consider the report of the working group of the review committee who have developed a waste and recycling strategy ahead of the expiry of the council's current waste and recycling contract in March 2022. Okay, Leslie, I appreciate you've been thrown in at the deep end with Marcus's non-appearance, but over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. My name's Leslie Atty. I'm Principal Street Scene Officer standing in for Marcus this evening. I'm going to explain how the waste and recycling strategy was developed and the steps that were taken, and to explain some of the background to the report. I'll also try to answer any questions that the members may have. Overall, the purpose of the report is to, as Councillor Sperring has pointed out, is to agree the new waste and recycling strategy that sets out the council's goals for future waste management services. The current waste contract is due to expire in March 2022, and the council will need to procure a new service, and the strategy underpins this. So pages 1 to 9 of the report is an introduction and provides the background to the work that was carried out by the member working group. The member working group was set up about a year ago, and they've been reviewing the current waste collection services and looking at future options for collections. Through the work of this group, the new strategy has been developed. The group looked at various influencing factors, including various strategic drivers and key principles. They looked at different waste collection methods, and these collection methods were modelled to test their effectiveness and the impact on costs and the recycling rate. From this, a draft strategy was drawn up. The strategic drivers were financial considerations, and comparisons were made to the cost of the current service. Those financial considerations were the age of the existing vehicle fleet and the cost of new vehicles, because the old fleet will need replacing. The increase on demand from an expanding population, the sale of commodities, which is the recycled materials that we collect, and changes in legislation. That's things like the national minimum wage and also environmental legislation. National legislation currently has a target recycling rate set at 50%, but that's increasing to 65% by 2035. The council has statutory duties to collect the waste and to collect some of that waste for recycling. So it's compulsory that we do that, as well as collecting other types of household waste. There is also an agreement with Essex County Council, which we need to fulfil, where various payments are made for diversion of waste from landfill. And the National Environment Bill is driving greater separation of waste by 2023. The group considered various types of collection, including a mixed recycling collection, as we do currently, versus twin stream, collecting two separate types of recyclables, and also a curbside sort, as well as separate food waste collections. And depending on how materials are collected, the containers and vehicles, and therefore the costs and recycling rate, will vary. Other factors to consider are the recycling market itself, which is a commodity market, and the group considered whether we would continue with a separate service for material sorting, or whether the council would take responsibility for direct sale of recycled materials in the future. Another key consideration is achieving carbon neutrality. One of the key contributors to the carbon footprint of the council is the collection of waste. So the group considered vehicle types and reviewed the feasibility of an all-electric fleet in the future. And it was recognised that the electric vehicle market is not fully ready for all-electric waste collections. However, the strategy paves the way for an all-electric fleet when the technology is more developed and ready for mass market. Moving on to page 9 of the report, section 5, the report describes the process of modelling of collections that was undertaken to assess the effectiveness of the various different collection methods and to see what impact it would have on costs and the recycling rate. The current collection service, waste collection service, was benchmarked against other councils, and then an options appraisal looking at the whole life costs of future collection schemes was undertaken. The group looked at 10 different collection methods, and this included alternative collection frequencies, different vehicle types, different containers and sizes, and greater separation of materials before they are collected. And the work assessed the comparative costs and recycling performance of those different models. Moving on to going through this process, the results, which are highlighted on pages 11 to 13 of the report. There are a series of graphs which shows the output from those different model options. And then page 14 of the report shows the conclusion of the study. The benchmarking that was undertaken showed that the current scheme performs well when compared with similar local authorities. And there are various ways in which collections could be provided in the future. And the modelling enabled the working group to test and eliminate some of those options on the basis of performance. Some of the key outcomes of that exercise were that introducing separate food waste collections results in significant recycling rate increase, but separate food waste collections also increases the cost as separate collection rounds will be needed. The lowest cost option would be to continue collecting commingled recyclables as we do now, but with a fortnightly garden waste collection. And reducing the frequency of non-recycling collections provided the highest increase in recycling rate and reduced costs. So taking all of those outcomes into consideration, a proposed waste strategy was put forward by the member working group. It was agreed that a new waste strategy should deliver the following for our district, and that is to seek to reduce costs, to comply with legislative requirements, to include a separate food waste collection, keep the collection scheme simple to understand and relatively easy to use for our residents, improve the quality of the recyclables collected and build in flexibility for future changes, and also to consider alternatives to fossil fuels when economically and technically feasible. The member working group also agreed or proposed a vision, the council's vision, which is a leaner and greener working towards zero waste. And more details of that can be found on page 17, section 8. So pages 20 to 24 of the report provide the outcomes of the options that were modelled and the appraisal, and page 25 is the waste and recycling strategy to be agreed today. I think all members will have read the report, but talking through the strategy slides, which is from page 25, Appendix A, slide 2 sets the scene in terms of introducing Rochford and the current situation. Slide 3 is the council's vision towards leaner and greener. Rochford will be making changes to collect the materials that really matter, looking to make savings, increase recycling rates and head towards carbon neutral. whilst taking care of people and the environment and turning waste into a resource. Slides 4 to 6 of the strategy, page 28 of the report, sets out the Council's objectives, providing a cost-efficient service, an easy-to-use service for residents, meeting statutory obligations and supporting the move towards a more circular economy and reducing carbon emissions. Slides 7 to 10 are the key deliverables, which are to anticipate statutory changes to waste collection by introducing a separate weekly food collection. Deliverable 2, reduce garden waste collection to control service costs. Deliverable 3, maximise recycling through reduced non-recyclable waste capacity. And deliverable 4, maximise the quality and value of the recyclables collected. Slide 11 on page 35, this describes how success will be measured by a series of objectives. And that's my presentation on the report and the strategy to be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. That's very comprehensive. I think the report that we've already seen and a number of us were involved in producing covers a lot of issues, but obviously members will have some questions. But first one, Councillor Michael Hoy, please.
Oh, sorry, I keep unmuting and muting myself. Thank you for that. I accidentally clicked off the hand as well. Just a couple of things. Yeah, I think it's a very comprehensive report and very well done. Congratulations to the members of the working group who did this, and obviously the officers. Just a couple of points, really. I'm sorry, I'm clicking to and fro between the reports on the same screen, which is never that easy. It's just a comment, really. It sort of is addressed further on in the report, but on page 7.1, we have strategic drivers and key principles, and I was rather surprised that recycling in itself wasn't mentioned as a key driver and a key principle. I think that was perhaps that was missed by its obviousness, I don't know, but I think that should have been there. Obviously, recycling is addressed in the report, but I don't know why it wasn't there as a strategic driver and a principle. Moving on to a little bit further, there's going to be a question here as well. I'm trying to find the page now. 7.27, which is the report itself of the strategy. We have leaner and greener, and I noticed I think green there. I think that might be somebody else's policy as well. We aim to collect the stuff that really matters. I'm not sure what that means. What stuff are we talking about? What stuff matters and what stuff doesn't? It's just we're not collecting any. There's certain things we're not going to collect. That brings me around to one of the questions, which is around green waste. Is that perhaps the intention that green waste won't matter eventually and we'll start charging for it? Make financial savings, fine. Increase recycling rates, which is good, got no problem with that. But if we look at our targets, which I'm very pleased to see, by the way, I know I always bang on about targets, and that quite often our strategies and policies don't actually have targets. So I'm very, very pleased to see we have targets here. But on page 7.35, objective 3, the objective is to maintain Rochester District Council's recycling rate over 62%. It doesn't actually say we are going to increase the recycling rate. It just says we're going to maintain it. So that's slightly contradictory. I'd rather have seen, and even if it was to increase it to the 65% earlier than the government target. I am aware that it's very difficult to increase the targets in this country at the moment, but given that we're also the aim is to decrease the total amount of waste, I would hope we should be able to increase the percentage of the waste we're receiving by more than the 62%. Turn waste into resource. Again, that comes back to this question about green garden waste. Is this an indication that although it's not talking about immediately, there is a lot of talk within the report and about charging this £40 for garden waste. I know this has been looked at over a few years. I've read reports from other councils where the take up wasn't as high as 35% mentioned in the report, and that gives me some concern. Otherwise, I'm quite happy. Sorry, I'm just reading something on my notes. I'm fairly happy with the report. Otherwise, it's just some of these contradictions and this disparity between the sort of the policy of increasing recycle rates, but the target is unchanged. If I could have an answer around the £40 charge for the green waste, that's all. Thank you.
I think going back on this, Councillor Hoy, I think all we're doing is making recommendations. It'll be up to full council to decide what course they wish to follow, but I don't know if you want to come in on that, Arthur.
Sorry, if I could just come in back on that. I'm just raising it because of this turn waste into resource, and there's a lot of talk around the £40 in there. So I think it's a relevant question we should ask of how much. What if I look at this and we say turn waste into resource? It's quite difficult to do at the moment. The most obvious way from reading the report is to charge £40. That's all.
I agree, but the situation is, all we can do is make recommendation. We cannot make these proposals firm. This will be down to full council to decide if that's the route they want to go down. All we can do is give them the various options to look at, and I would suggest that somewhere along the line, in due course, perhaps another working party will be put together to go through what we have produced and recommended, or hopefully recommend, to present full council with a final proposal that the full council can vote on. But Arthur, do you wish to come back in on that one?
Yeah, thank you. I think this is more about the quality of the waste that we collect. There is considerable contamination, and this is going to help us to eliminate that. Yes, there will be in the future there will be means to have a chargeable green waste collection of which isn't mandatory. But as far as I'm aware, we will be required by the government to collect food separately. I think that's correct, isn't it, Leslie? But that's not definite yet. But we were expecting it this year. But
yeah, it's likely to be introduced in 2023 as separate food waste collection.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it on that one. Thank you.
Is that? Are you okay with that, Michael, or do you wish to come back?
Whereas that, yeah, there's not much point. This is the waste strategy, as I'm aware. It's not the contract or anything like the contract. It's just hopefully how a contract would have to apply itself. So there's not really much to come back on that. I noticed Councillor Williams did mention about education, and obviously that has come up in the past around the waste and the contamination of the bins, and I know that was a particular problem during the early days of the pandemic, that there was a lot more contamination than they had been previously. What percentage at the moment is lost to contamination? Is that known?
Leslie might know that one.
It's approximately 9% of the recyclables that are collected at the moment, which has gone up slightly over the last few years.
Yeah, so I suppose that comes back to the education, which is sort of mentioned within the strategy, but I think perhaps we need to, I know there was some talk about new stickers for the bins, but I think perhaps we need to go beyond that sometimes, because it does get, although we do have a one bin strategy, as you say, effectively for recycling, it's still quite confusing for many people what they can and can't put in there. And I think there's still confusion around coffee pods, for instance, and crisp packets still, and which plastic film can or can't go in the bins. And I think we need to go a bit beyond the stickers on the bins, because there are so many items now which the people are looking at to go in or not to go in.
Absolutely, this is going to be considered by the bin hangers and things like that. But this will be included in the new contract when it comes.
Okay, thank you, Arthur. I'll go down the list of hands as I believe they came up, but if I've got them in the wrong order, I do apologise. I think the next one is Councillor Mike Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to show my newness on the council here and apologise for asking a question I'm sure everybody looking at me already knows the answer to. Could you just confirm, either Leslie or Arthur, whichever you is easier to do this? I fully understand the aims and the ambitions I think that are expressed within the report and completely support them. I just wanted to understand. I can see in front of me. I mean, I'm looking at page 20, Appendix 1. There are 3 options: option 1, option 2, and option 3. Are we just saying this is a recommendation for full council at some point to consider which option they want to go to, or are we recommending one of those options? Because if we're recommending one of those specific options, I've missed that.
As far as I'm aware, we're not, are we, Leslie, on this one? This is just a recommendation to go to full council.
Right.
That's
Okay.
right.
That answers me perfectly. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I believe the next one was Councillor Bob Milne.
Oh yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, this is really a couple of questions for Leslie and Arthur, really. Obviously, the waste identification for the public is either very easy, generic, or there are some specific items, and that's where we get into a grey area. And we'd already discussed at some stage in the past government looking at Q coding or doing something to packaging and all that kind of thing. A very simple thing, though, that has popped up is I started receiving professional society magazines in biodegradable bags. They're actually made of potato starch, but they look like they're plastic, but they're not. And they can be made in different colours. So as part of all of this kind of general look at this thing, I know we're going to recommend something that's generic to the council and something potentially can save money and protect the environment. So we've got 2 big things there. So this idea of the biodegradable bags is can we recommend that we should pursue looking at something like this? Because you could put the food waste in the pink one in the same bin. When they get to the other end, it's very easy for the workers to go, bosh, food, green, bang, in another bin, which is all good. I fully appreciate the problems of green waste, and I understand we're one of the few councils around this part of the world that don't actually charge for it. As a reward for this, if we were to reorganise the way we deal with it, what could be the potential ball figures for savings and the advantages? That's just it, really. I know it's a big question, that one, and that's just it. Thank you.
Leslie, I don't know if you have anything on this.
I think that one of the a couple of things really coming out of the National Waste and Resources Strategy. One is that separate food waste collections are likely to be mandated, and therefore the bags that you're describing, we would have to look at whether they would be accepted by the processor at the time, and then perhaps do some publicity around that. And another thing that we will be advocating is home composting. And of course, if a bag is compostable, then it can go in a home composter. So that's something that again, we would look at, but it would require some research and publicity. As far as the costs are concerned, I couldn't give you a figure off the top of my head as to whether that would have any impact on the costs as such. I think that the separate food waste collections, as outlined in the report, and if you look at the detail, it does mention that there is an additional cost to collect separate food waste, but that could be offset by doing something differently with other parts of the collection scheme.
Yeah, thanks. So if we did something more apparent, green, like every other week, that could offset the cost of dealing with the food, that kind of thing.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that.
This will become more apparent when we go out to for tender, asking for tender on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Councillor, Mrs. Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to support Councillor Hoy's concern regarding the green waste and the constant referrals to the £40 cost. which almost sounds like it's a predetermined figure and charge, which are then contradicted in the report. At 414, you put, although not yet law, the Environment Bill is an indication that the next few years will see significant change for local authorities in terms of waste. Mandatory collection scheme changes are likely to be introduced, separate food waste collected weekly, and possible free garden waste collection. So why we're emphasising a charge when the government's considering compulsory free garden waste collection, I'm a little concerned about. And it goes on to say more focus on recycling, quality and separation. And again, I would like to support the previous speakers on this. I think one of the issues that we have is we do have a contamination rate. It does cost money, and it's done because the council, although you can look on a website, who's going to look up on a website before they go and put something in a bin? The labels on the bin have disintegrated years ago. What we need is some constant, simple clarification and communication on a regular basis to explain to our residents where we get the contamination, what the issue is, and perhaps focus once a week, once a month on a particular item. The communication needs to be greatly improved, and it needs to be done simpler. We don't want a little wheel that we've got to turn around and clutters up the kitchen. We don't want to have to look up on a website. We want a simple message that residents understand, and if it means labelling the bins, would certainly be a start. But I think the communication has not been as effective as I would have hoped, and presumably if that is improved, then we would improve our rate of recyclable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you want to come back on that one, Arthur?
Yeah, it's just that we did anticipate stickering the bins earlier this year, but COVID took over, I'm afraid. And it is something that's going to be included, and the education side of it will be taken into account with the new contractors or the present one if they tender correctly.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that, Mr. Chairman, but having said that, I have not had my bin re-stickered since it was first delivered. So it's something that's well overdue. Thank you.
I take your point, Councillor Mrs. Mason. I've also come across, very close to me, a number of temporary residents in this area who have come into the district from other areas, have never seen this sort of system before. They're used to putting everything in a big bag. So we've had to take the time to try and educate them. But I think we've all taken on board, and as Councillor Williams said, there were plans put in place to try and expedite training and advice and guidance for the residents, but circumstances have overtaken us on this occasion. But I can assure you, from what we've heard at the working group, this is well on the agenda and is one of the main items that we will need to address in the short term.
Well, good intentions are all very well, Mr. Chairman, but I'd like to see some action. Thank you.
Oh, well, I think it's fair to say that there's enough of us who want to make this happen. It will happen. Thank you. Councillor Hookway.
When?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I just picked up on something in the report. It's a little bit concerning. It's under 4.3, under the age of existing vehicle fleet. It says in the report that it was noted that at present neither option has yet been modelled within the current medium-term financial strategy for the council. It is therefore likely to cause an additional pressures on the budget position. This relates to the replacement of the fleet, as to whether it's going to be part of the contractors or the council purchasing a new fleet. This might be a bit more of a question for when the medium-term financial strategy comes before review, because it's concerning that a matter which has long been known that this was going to come up for to the contract was going to come to an end, and that obviously we are looking ahead to some degree, but you know, really there should have been some financial reserve placed in the medium-term financial strategy for the potential of such a large outlay of council funds, especially if the council is going to purchase new vehicles, which is a high probability. So I don't know if anyone wants to make any comment back in relation to that particular aspect in the report. Thank you.
Naomi, do you want to come in on that one, or otherwise I will?
Thank you, Councillor Sparing. Yeah, I'd just say that, yeah, Councillor Hookray is obviously right that we are aware of the budget risks associated with providing the appropriate waste vehicles. The reason it hasn't been explicitly built into MTFS at this stage is because there is a variety of options in terms of how we procure and run those vehicles under consideration. And therefore, it's not known with sufficient clarity at this time whether we would be purchasing the vehicles ourselves, which would obviously be a capital outlay for the council, in which case we could look at different methods of financing it, or whether it would provide better value for money for the contractor themselves to procure or run the vehicles, which, as the report mentions, would obviously have revenue implications. So I think because we haven't got sufficient certainty at this time about the method and the form of financing those vehicles, we haven't yet built those into MTFS, although it has been noted as a specific risk. And as I say, we have got sort of a number of options in terms of how we could finance those available to us. But a decision hasn't been made at this point in time. And as I think it's been noted earlier on, obviously there is a variety of financial considerations as part of the wider waste procurement, waste contract procurement, and the actual sort of model of delivery of the contract itself will need to be considered alongside the vehicles as part of that strategy.
Thank you, Naomi.
Chairman, can I just quickly come
Yeah,
back
certainly, go on.
Yes, thank you very much, Naomi, for that explanation. It also raises an interesting thing we've looked at in the previous report about the current low cost of borrowing. So is there a strong possibility that the council may look at financing something, a large purchase or potential purchase like this wholly through borrowing, bearing in mind the interest rate being so low?
If I may come back on
Yes,
that, Chair. Obviously, our current strategy doesn't allow borrowing. However, we have noted and discussed at previous review committees around the Treasury strategy that it may be advantageous for us to consider whether we want to continue that policy into future years. As you say, borrowing is at sort of historically low rates at the moment, and obviously we have to consider that as part of the wider strategy. But if the most effective and cost-effective way of purchasing the vehicles, if we were to want to do that, is to borrow, that is something that the council could obviously reconsider, but it would require the appropriate approvals of the strategy to amend it to allow borrowing. But certainly, if we were to borrow now, seem to be as good a time as any, given as you say the historic low interest rates. But there is obviously no decision at this point, and as I say, it would require a formal approval of a revised strategy where we to suggest that was the most cost-effective way to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, can I thank officers for putting in so much of their time into the working group. I just want to say, as you can see from the size of the document, a lot of action took place during those meetings. It was actually a mammoth task. Some of those meetings went on for over 2 hours, and working groups are open to all members to come along to and contribute to. So I just wanted to make that clear for anybody listening. Also, with regard to the mention of the £40 around the green waste bins. Can I just say that that is not predetermined? It is in the report, but also, as another councillor actually mentioned, under 4.2, also included is mention of the Environment Bill. And there will be a consultation going out to the public. And one mention of it is the green waste may be considered as free for all residents across the country. So nothing is predetermined by any means in that report. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Members, I can't see any other people indicating to speak. Is there anybody, Sonia? Have I missed anyone?
No,
Chairman, if I may.
Yes, certainly, Arthur.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to thank the working group for everything. It was quite onerous, and it took a long time. Special thanks to Marcus Houghton for such a concise report, and especially tonight to Leslie for stepping forward in Marcus's place. Thank you all.
Okay, members, if there's no more questions, and I would point out this is a recommendation, nothing is set in stone, nothing has been approved. There is a recommendation on page 7.18 of the report, paragraph 14.1, that it be recommended to the council that the waste and recycling strategy be adopted. Would you please raise your hand if you want a recorded vote? I can't see anybody. On that basis, would you please, if you support this being put forward to full council as a recommendation, please indicate now by raising your blue hand. Okay, you got that, Sonia?
Yes, if people could lower their.
If people could now lower your hands. Anybody not supporting this recommendation, would you please raise the blue hand now?
Thank you, Chairman.
And anybody abstaining, please take your hand down if there is anybody. And then anybody who is abstaining, please raise the blue hand now.
Thank you, Chairman. That's approved.
Thank you, members.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, could you give us the numbers?
Yes, certainly. Sonia, could you?
I assume it was unanimous, but
yes. No, there were 11 voting, 11 voting for, 0 against, and there were 3 that did not actually vote. So I assume it's abstained.
Well, I'm not sure if you counted my hand, Sonia. So could you check that, because I certainly didn't abstain.
Okay, members.
Sorry if I may come in as well on a point of order. I think you'll find that I'm not sure if Councillor Hazelwood was able to use it either, because I noticed in his screen he was holding his hand up. So I'm not sure if he was voting for or his machine wasn't working.
Okay, members, can we please, if you are in support of this recommendation, please indicate by raising your blue hand now. And Sonia, I can see Councillor Hazelwood is raising his hand. Okay.
And so is Joe McPherson.
And Councillor McPherson, Sonia.
The reason I'm doing that is my blue hand won't come up.
Okay. So there's all the blue hands plus Councillor McPherson and Councillor Hazelwood. Okay, please lower your blue hands, members. that clear now, Sonia?
Yes, Chairman.
Okay. Any members voting against the recommendation, please raise the blue hand now.
There are no hands raised, Chairman.
Okay. And any members abstaining, please raise the blue hand now.
Again, no hands raised, Chairman.
Okay, Sonia, could you please give us the figures then?
Chairman, the 13 and 0 with one extension.
Okay. Thank you, members. Moving on to agenda item 8, the key decisions document.
Mr. Chairman, before we move on, I'm a little concerned that a vote was potentially miscounted. Obviously, in this matter, it wouldn't have made a great deal of difference because of the significant majority. But I do think that we need to have a system where that A, the numbers should be given anyway, and B, that the members have a choice of, according to the monitoring officer, of voting for, of voting against, abstaining, or not registering a vote. And I think we need to be very clear that every member has had their opportunity to be counted on these votes. It does raise concern, and perhaps you could look at it after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Mason. I'm sure Sonia's taken that on board as Ms. Law, so I'm sure that will be taken into account for future meetings.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 8, key decision documents. As far as I can see, there are 3 items on there, members. The first is the disposal of the redundant Crown Hill public conveniences. This report will go to the executive in the new year. There's the leisure contract. There is a report to tomorrow's executive outlining the options for the leisure services provision from the 1st of April 2021, and also the suspension of parking charges on the Saturdays before Christmas. This decision has now been taken, members. Is there anybody that wishes to raise any points on those 3 items? If so, please indicate by raising your blue hand. Councillor Hookway.
Thank you, Chairman. I see that it may be kind of a bit late, but there was a decision made in relation to free parking in the run-up to Christmas on Saturdays. I know it's been advertised now, but it's kind of something that is like we're carrying on as per normal in sort of circumstances which are abnormal, and there was the idea floated that maybe this decision could have come before review, so we could have looked at it and maybe made alternative options, bearing in mind that a lot of the businesses that were shut due to the recent lockdown are sort of like smaller shops, sort of smaller traders, and we could have possibly looked at this and maybe come to an alternative thing. Maybe we could have had free car parking in the run-up to Christmas for all days, not just Saturdays, to help businesses in the run-up to Christmas. So it may be sort of like shutting the gate after the horse has bolted, but it's something that we could have possibly looked at, but I don't know if anyone else has got any comments in relation to this. Thank you.
Councillor Hoy.
Sorry, I realised I was speaking to a muted mic there. There's 2 things. One to follow up what Councillor Hawkway said, but I've got another issue on one of the other key decisions. So I'll just back up what Councillor Hawkway said. I think for some reason the free parking in December has become very late again. Obviously, it used to be made as an urgent decision until I think it was pointed out that it shouldn't really be urgent because we know when Christmas is each year. It doesn't change. And I'm not sure why it's made so late. Perhaps there was an excuse around the pandemic. But if it's being made so late, it has effectively it's sort of, to members, it's the same as an urgent decision. And I do question why it was made so late, and perhaps that could be answered now. I would expect it to be made much earlier. I know that it's made around the budget, but I think this should have been made at least a month or two earlier than it was, and that would allow members to look at it properly. Thank you.
I really can't answer that, Councillor Hoy. I don't know why it was made when it was made.
Can we go back to the?
I mean, I'm just answering this one first of all. I don't know when it was made. It is, as you say, something that has almost become the norm over many years. But I think there's a fine line at the moment that the council has lost huge amounts of money in parking revenue, and there is the fine line between trying to support the high streets. And I think that's a situation that is going to be running for the next few months, because if you can guarantee that this is the end of all the lockdowns and all the tier systems, well, good luck, because I'm not convinced that it is. That's a personal view. I've got nothing to support it. Right, Councillor Wilkinson.
My comment is in relation to the second item, which is regarding the leisure contract. Members will know, no doubt, because it's been circulated, that I have two questions on notice for the executive in relation to item 8 on the agenda tomorrow night, one of which is in relation to the extension of the leisure contract. The only reason I raise it now, Chairman, is because it's in front of us on review.
Yeah.
Are we going to be voting for this, or voting? Are we making any comment? And I just want to be careful. I understand my position here.
No, what we're doing, as far as I'm aware, Son, you maybe want to correct me. These were issues that have been raised and were key decisions. And we bring these forward on a regular basis to ensure basically they don't just move into the ether. This is an update on these particular items. I know Councillor Hoy wants to come back on another one. This is an issue. We've talked about the disposal of the toilets, the leisure contract. This is the update. It's up to the executive.
So this is for noting purposes, then I take it.
Yeah, and we can raise the questions.
Thank you.
Sorry, Michael, I forgot you had something else you want to raise. Perhaps before I move on to Councillor Mrs. Mason, you'd like to come back, Michael?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, you may have perhaps I switched off at some point, but you said we'd discussed what I was going to raise already. I was going to raise the first key decision about the sale of the toilets at Crown Hill. Was that the case, or did I misunderstand you?
No, as far as I'm aware, I do not know. I don't know if anybody else knows anything, but I certainly know nothing further than what it says there, that a report regarding the disposal of the Crown Hill toilets will go to the executive next year. I've heard nothing other than what I've just read.
All I was going to comment is, I know it is the 1st, but it's still the 1st of December rather than November today, and I'm not sure where the report is. This is something that I think I'm keen to look at a bit more, but obviously we haven't got the report yet to look at, so perhaps it's something I'd be possibly looking to bring to the review committee when a decision is actually made.
I don't disagree with you, Michael, and it can also say that because of the situations that we've seen in the last 48 hours, where we've seen 25,000 people being made redundant, the impact on the high street, what was the plan a few months ago may not be the plan anymore. I honestly don't know.
Yeah, okay, it's just for warning that I'd be looking at keeping an eye on it, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. Councillor Wilkinson, is that hand still from the same one, or is there something else?
No, I'll lower it. Sorry, Chair.
Sorry, Councillor Mrs. Mason.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to support the issues raised by Councillor Hookway and Hoy regarding the parking. I think it's regrettable that our portfolio holders don't know when Christmas is. It's been pointed out before. It was brought forward and done in a timely fashion. It hasn't been done this year. I appreciate that the council is losing revenue, but we have had a considerable sums in excess, I believe, of 2 million from the government to assist us in our finances. As you say, the short-term impact, and you've said this yourself on the high street, of the number of redundancies is going to have a high impact, which if we don't support our businesses will have a knock-on impact on our revenues. And I do think that the council missed an opportunity to help residents that are finding it difficult and businesses that are finding it difficult. And it is regrettable that the decision was made so late that that discussion couldn't have been made properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members. I think if there's no other questions, I think we've noted all your comments, and we'll work on to the agenda for the work plan. Members, are there any questions on the work plan? Councillor Mrs. Mason.
Yes, I'm quite concerned about this. We have items on the work plan that haven't been allocated time. The asset strategy, the car parking update, animal welfare charter, the local electricity bill. And yet in November, this council saw fit to cancel the November meeting and not hold a review committee at all. The review committee is an important committee. It is the committee that overviews and scrutinises the work of the council. I've never before known a meeting of such a committee, Councillor, and it causes a great deal of concern. The other thing that concerns me is that in March, mid-March, we were due to have a report circulated about the management of open spaces on new builds. And the legal officers had been tasked with providing us information. This was not done, and I think in view of the situation that we all found ourselves in, although it was before the pandemic, it was due, but nevertheless, I think it was understandable it was left. However, this was brought up again in August. It was brought up with the acting managing director in August and again in November. But it appears that we don't have the resources to deal with the workload that we have. So what I'd like to do as a matter of urgency is put the resources for the work on the council work plan, because if we can't undertake the work that we're tasked with doing, there is a fundamental problem. So I think this council should, as a matter of urgency, this committee rather should look at the resourcing. And I'd like an explanation as well as to why the report that was due in mid-March, we're now in December, has still not been provided.
And Sonia, could you make a note of this so that we can pass this on to the executive and the group and the council leader for his comments in due course?
Yes, I mean, in terms of the specific issue that that Councillor Mrs. Mason raises around the the management of those spaces, etc. It's unfortunate that Mr. Houghton is absent from this evening's meeting, because I know that he would have been able to provide an update this evening.
I'm sorry, sorry, Mr. Chairman, I take an objection to that. Mr. Houghton on the 6th of August was asked to contact me within a week to determine the situation. That was in August. We are now in December and I've not heard from him. So I don't think that's an acceptable reason.
Okay, well,
Which is why I'm asking for a review, the review committee to look at staffing resources, because so far it seems that we haven't got the staff to carry out basic functions.
Well, I will ask this got to be highlighted to the council leader and to put it to the executive or the appropriate bodies that will be looking at resourcing of the council. Councillor Mrs. McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. Really, it's just a polite reminder and a point of order. Could fellow councillors please follow protocol? Raise hand. wait for the chairman to come to them and not speak over, especially other councillors and the chairman as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McPherson. Okay, members, are there any other issues that wish to be raised?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask that we put on the work plan that I've asked? I've not. You said you'll take it to the executive. We've tried that. We've tried.
No, I didn't say I'd take it to the executive. I said I'd take it to the council leader.
Yeah, he's aware of the situation. Thank you.
Well, we can raise it then with him directly. If necessary, I will raise it with him directly myself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
So, Chairman, I had been indicating, but I think the hand is playing up somewhat.
Oh, right. Yeah. Over to you then, Councillor Hoy.
Strangely, I was going to raise the issue around the Open Spaces Working Group, which is the one Councillor Mrs Mason is talking about, which hasn't met since the first meeting. And on that basis, I echo the same concerns.
Okay.
Although there's been a couple of working groups which have done quite a substantial amount of work, the scrutiny committee in itself has been rather bare in what it's been doing, in my opinion. I really think we should put this as for the committee for the next meeting, the resources, not just take it to the leader, but I would like it.
Well, I'll take it to the leader, Councillor Hoy. The reason I'm reluctant, because I'm not chairman of this committee, to put any more items on the January agenda is quite simply that I believe, it's a personal view, that there will be quite a lot of questions, answers, presentation needed in relation to the review of the COVID situation, past, present, and in the future. And I think that could become quite an extensive meeting in itself. And I don't want to, how can we say, cramp anybody's questioning time or going through this. I think this could be quite a serious and lengthy review of the council procedures, what we've done, what we haven't done, and go from there. But I'm reluctant to commit Councillor Burton for anything further. If he wishes to do that when he's fully recovered, we can raise it with him, and if he wishes to include it in the agenda, so be it. But I think at the moment I would be reluctant, and but I say if Councillor Burton wants to take it on board, fine.
I do take your point. Therefore, at the very least, could we just add this to the work plan?
Yeah,
as an item. So at least it is not
forgotten
or forgotten.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm the mute button's playing up. I will raise this with the council leader. Okay, members, if there's nothing else, I can't see anybody indicating, I will close the meeting at 20:37 and say thank you very much for attending.
Thank you, Chair. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
After the Zoom
Thank
meeting,
you,
Chair.